get yourself professional help. You need it. You need a professional.
That's not the first time I've heard somebody tell me that.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims, and my co-host today, as always, is Donna Grindle. How are you doing today, Donna?
Fantastic, David. How are you?
Tell me a little more about your fantasticism.
Fantasticism?
I'm on a mission to create a new word.
Fantasticism. I have a friend of mine that they create good words, and I think we should start submitting words, David. It's on now. We're going to make up words throughout this entire thing, I'm sure. There's going to be too many opportunities for you in this episode. Yeah,
because today we're going to talk about how your fruit's hanging. And it's going to be hard for me to even make it through this one. And what we're going to discuss is an absolutely different way to look at the Ashley Madison breach than you've ever looked at before, I'm sure.
Because it's how does your fruit hang, yeah.
So for those who don't know about the Ashley Madison breach by chance, if they're not watching the news, give us a little rundown as to what that is and how that happened.
Oh, well, you're the one that's the expert in it, right?
I am not an expert with that. I can promise. Okay. I checked. I am not on the list.
Nor is your wife. We talked about.
Shoo-wee.
So Ashley Madison was a site that you could log into if you wanted to have an affair. And hackers, which, when you have a site, the hackers can find you in many ways. That was just screaming, hey, look at us. But the hackers broke in there, and not only did they break in, but they stole everything. And then they published 20 gig worth of data that they had, everything from the names of all of the users, their email addresses, to the emails of the CEOs. So there was a lot of information they shared with the world.
So how many divorce attorneys do you think are using that for marketing purposes?
Yeah, well, and the statistics, what they're finding is that it was, 90-something% were men and tons of fake accounts that were women. The majority of the women in there were fake accounts that the company had built.
For their husband.
The company had built them, and they were kind of using them to get people to be on there. So it's interesting to know that clearly the men were more interested in the site than the women, and they knew that because even if you look at some of the promos and stuff, it's a woman's face. So it was clearly
it's entrapment. That's what it is.
It's just a horrible thing sitting there waiting to happen, waiting to blow up in their face. And they were a little arrogant about it because I saw, and what prompted this Where Does Your Fruit Hang episode was an interview that some reporter was able to do with the hackers. And the hackers, they had enough information in this interview that they felt pretty certain that the people that they were having this exchange with in a forum were indeed the hackers. And they said that they had been in there for a very long time, like a year, and kind of just gathered information, watched what was going on, kept up with discussions between the CEO and other people. And they said it was so easy to get in. It was like no one was even watching. There was nobody watching the gate. They just more or less walked right in and took over everything. And they're able to gather all this information and embarrass a ton of people. And what's even more interesting is, the technology companies, you would think that they would worry about security and stuff. And they were, there's a list that's the top 10 tech companies with Ashley Madison accounts. Wow. IBM had way more than anybody else. So they came in first with 300 and something, and HP came in second with 160 something. So clearly the IBM addresses may have a wealth of information in there. But it gives you, there's so much detail there with that release to the public with those email addresses. There's so much that can happen with that information now. And the point that the hackers made, that it was just so easy to get in. And then all of the people that are scrambling to explain why their email address is on there. Oh, somebody set me up. It wasn't me. They're shocked to learn that there was not better security on this site. Really?
So Ashley Madison was not HIPAA compliant?
No. There was apparently no security plan whatsoever, no monitors, nothing. Because they didn't even know they had been hacked until it was all released, It's not like they found it and then somebody shut them out. They never did. So if you think that they're shocked to find out a site like that isn't secure, you can imagine how shocked people are to find out that my healthcare data is not even being watched after. So do you want to be the one that is the Ashley Madison of healthcare? I don't think so. So Ashley Madison, is now going to be a term for technical people forever, I am sure. But the whole point of this episode is to talk about, if they haven't been looking, have you been looking? And how is it that you should be watching out for these kind of things? Because everybody will say, okay, well, I'm supposed to know if the hackers are in there, but I leave that to you technical people. Well, number one, that means you should have professional technical support, not just somebody that comes in and works on something from time to time. And number two is, do you expect that you shouldn't have to check on anything? I mean, do you just never even look at your own bank account? You just let the accountant handle it and spend some money? You never look? You should look. Pay a little attention. So we've got some things to talk about here, and the propeller is going to spin on both of our heads. However, we're going to try very hard to explain the things that you should, after you have professional HIPAA compliant IT support, things that you should be talking to them about, or things that you should get from them to help see that they're doing what you need them to do and that the systems are working. You need that confirmation yourself and to understand better. So what do you think, David? Can we do this?
Yes, we can.
Yay.
Yeah, never assume that your IT company or anybody, any vendor is doing what they say they're going to do around the reporting and compliance and all that stuff. I mean, they may be, but you should definitely be looking.
Plus, people make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes them double check their stuff, you hope, because they got to give it to you. And you just never know when somebody's going to notice that somebody made a mistake. I mean, it happens.
So during this podcast, you get to ask yourself, are you a low-hanging fruit for attackers? How's your fruit hanging? Is it low, or is it just, as you put before we actually started recording, or is it just laying on the ground?
That's right. All you have to do is know how to go pick it up.
Just walk up to it and grab it. The fruit on the ground.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's, it's that vision of, I can't even get the low-hanging fruit because I'm tripping over all the fruit that's on the ground. That's how bad it could be.
Yeah. It reminds me like when I was a kid and my grandparents would send me out to the pecan tree or the pecan tree, wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And you would walk out toward the tree, and before you get there, you would fall over all the pecans on the ground. You just roll, and you couldn't even stand up when you got close to the tree because there was so many on the ground. So I was like, I'm not going to climb the tree and shake the limb when I can just stay on the ground.
Yeah,
and
get a rake.
Pick them all up.
Get a rake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, now they make these cool little things you roll over and just picks them up. Yeah, so you don't even have to do it like I used to do it as a kid.
Thanks for the education on pecan picking. Now
you know the rest of the story.
Okay, so back to your other job.
Yeah, so let's go back to IT.
Yeah.
The pecan picking didn't work out, so I had to get an IT job.
Oh, God. The machines took over. So let's talk about, you've got your HIPAA compliant IT company, and they come in and they help you out and they say, don't worry, we got this. And they look over, and if you're not using a business class firewall, I'm pretty sure they're already in, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're if you're going to the local box store, I don't care if it's Walmart or Office Depot or any of those, very few of those are going to offer you a enterprise or business class firewall, or another thing we call is a UTM, which we'll discuss in a second. But yeah, I mean, you're really going to have an IT provider come in, and those are not things that typically you're going to be able to take out of the box and set up yourself. They're usually more complicated than the average user is going to be able to figure out on how to set those up and work properly. And they also come typically with a subscription as well to the services that are in that. And there again, that kind of goes into the UTM product too, where it may have not just the firewall built in, but it can have antivirus and intrusion prevention and all these other things along with that. So, and one of the things you need to look at too on your firewall or router, and your IT company should be looking at, hopefully, is whether or not the firmware, which is the software that device runs on, you need to make sure that firmware is up to date. And sometimes the device may be able to do an automatic update, but in many cases, they don't do an automatic update. So you have to make sure you do a manual update to that firmware. And that's something your IT provider should be able to do, but it's something that you should make sure that they are doing.
Right, that it's being checked, that it's on the list of things to verify. And the reason is the firmware, again, that's software, and it has security vulnerabilities in it. No.
How many drinks did you have before we started?
And this, I'm just going to have to say those vulnerable things, because we're going to need to say that several times in this episode. But anyhow, the concept of your router, your firewall, they have a huge number of vulnerabilities that are discovered in them on a regular basis. And those fixes and the patches that they send out, within hours of them sending out an update, they're going to find more vulnerabilities. It's a constant cycle of attack. And the downside is that you're never going to be certain that you have the most secure environment, because as soon as you get the firmware up to date, within a few days, there's going to be new vulnerabilities. But you can be sure that all of the old ones are being used more than the new ones, if you know what I mean. And so then let's talk a little bit about the UTM, because the UTM is really the next step up from just your basic router with some firewall software built in. And it's really where small businesses need to be, I think. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that's all we use for our small business clients. We won't even use your standard router. We only use the UTMs, which stands for Unified Threat Management. So we use a Unified Threat Management device, and it incorporates everything that a normal firewall router will do, but it also adds in the functionality of security and privacy and intrusion prevention. If there is something that's going on, you can see that. It's got antivirus built into it. Not to say that negates you having to have antivirus on your workstations and your server. It's just another layer. So hopefully you have antivirus, what's called in the IT community, we call that at the edge of your network.
Right. It's looking for traffic that it knows would be that kind of nasty stuff.
Yeah. So you want to layer your defenses just like you would do for your home. You layer that there, or a business, or anything you're doing. You do the same thing in IT and technology. You layer your levels of defense. And the good thing about a UTM is if it's a decent UTM, it'll have some really great reporting around what it's seeing and capturing and what's happening. And there's been times, and I think we've talked about this before, and I've mentioned it, that I've had clients that, they've told me that everything's great, and I put a UTM on their network, and then the first report I run after the first month, they're finding out they're getting 2,500, 3,000, hacking attempts a day, where people are trying to get in, and they didn't know that beforehand. But since they have the UTM on there, it's reporting that stuff's going on. Yeah. And so you know what's happening, and your IT company can know how to better defend you against that.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times, I've had cases where they tell me, "Oh, our internet's just awful. It's just horrible. I don't know what's going on today. And you got to fix this. You got to fix that." And you go look, and they're just getting pounded with these external attacks trying to find ways in. So to say that a simple device with a minimum amount of capability can handle that much traffic. I mean, these devices, they have to, it's little gerbils on a wheel running around inside there trying to keep up. So they have their own memory, they have their own capabilities, and there's only so much they can handle. And that's why you have to restart them sometimes because they just get overwhelmed. So the other big point I want to make sure we get in there is do not ever leave the default passwords on the devices. Please.
On any device.
No device. Access points, routers, firewall. I don't care what it is. If you leave those default passwords on there, you know how quickly we go in and we go, oh, it's linksys, blah, blah, blah. What's the default password? It tells us right there. In seconds, we know what it is. So,
yeah. And I have seen too on some of the devices where it'll have a really good default password. So it won't be, password or blank or whatever, but the pretty decent default password will also be on a sticker stuck to the side of the device.
Right.
So, that's, it might help you if somebody's trying to hack in from the outside, but anybody can walk in your office and sometimes fairly easily gain access to the area and see that information.
Take
or
a picture
somebody
of
that
it.
works there. Yeah, or somebody that works there might see it. And there's no telling. Or it could be the same password you use for everything in your office.
Oh, good Lord.
So
Please don't.
if they get access to one thing, they get access to everything.
Yeah, particularly that, because that controls your entire network. And that also brings us back to the companies that are IT companies that say, well, we never access the EMR, so therefore we're not covered by HIPAA. What do we have to say to those people, David?
I'm trying to find something to bang my head on. Oh my gosh, I hear that so often.
Yeah.
No, you do not have to look at it in order to be considered a HIPAA business associate. You just have to have persistent access to it.
Right.
So if you're working on systems that data is there in any sort of way, then yes, if you're maintaining it, creating it, transmitting it, receiving it, any of those things, doing backups, all that stuff, yes, you are a HIPAA covered business associate.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, well, your job is I'm going to just prevent the hackers from getting in, but in order to do that, I'm going to have complete control of everything, and you just need to trust me.
Yeah.
We're not planning for everything to go right here. All of these things that are in place are to plan for what could go wrong and how do we prevent that? Well, one of the things that could go wrong is an IT company that doesn't understand the extent of the data and the importance of it. So therefore, they leave a hole in the firewall open because they have no checks and balances. They do like some other company where they accidentally open up servers so that you can get to it from the internet, and Google indexes it. It happens all the time that people make mistakes, and if you don't make sure that these people that have access to all these things, whether it's your own staff or you outsource it, you have complete control of the network when you control these things. So remember that, because you need to be watching them to a certain level to make sure they understand and that they're doing what they need to do, because it's the people again that have control, and you got to watch after them.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say too, I don't care how many times they splash HIPAA compliant or HIPAA certified or any of those other terms. I don't care how many times they splash it on their website or their marketing material or anything like that. You need to ask questions.
Right.
I run into companies all the time, and I'm sure you do too, Donna, that they say they're compliant and they have not a clue as to what that really means, because they're not doing the work of HIPAA. They're just saying basically they have a HIPAA compliant solution, but their company is not HIPAA compliant. And that happens a lot in the IT world, because what a company might do is they'll purchase a HIPAA compliant backup solution from a vendor, and then they'll resell that to the end user and say, we're HIPAA compliant because we use a HIPAA compliant solution. And that's not the way that works. It doesn't transfer.
Right. If you're the one setting all that up and you have access to the data before it goes into the encrypted backup, which you do, whether you do anything with it or not is irrelevant. You have access to it. So we should get off that topic, because we're going to rant about that one. That drives us both crazy.
day long. Yeah.
So,
but here, another thing that people aren't paying a lot of attention to these days that they should are some of the other devices that are now becoming more and more internet connected. Copiers and printers are things that are easy for hackers to get into, but also some of the new things now are things like smart TVs, other internet connected devices you may have within your business as well.
Oh yeah, I already started work on another episode on the Internet of Things, which it's not for today, but we will definitely go into just how many connected devices you have that you may not even be realizing it. And so many stories you hear, I've actually heard interviews with hackers who say, the first thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get in through your firewall, and I'll do these scans and I'll do X, Y, and Z. And it's stuff that's readily available on the internet. I mean, I could download the stuff and scan through and see if I could get in somewhere. I don't, but I could. So they go in, and then the first thing they start looking for is a printer or a copier, because people don't change those passwords. They just use the standard. So when you look at let's say you lease your copier, a lot of people do that, and the copier company says, well, we want to keep the default password on there so that it's easy for us. Okay, well, easy. Anytime somebody says we're going to leave it that way because it's easy for us, that's a big red flag, a huge red flag. So with it being easy for them, guess who else it's easier for? Everybody. And those things have like processors on them and the ability to access other things. So they go into those things, and then they can see, okay, now all the traffic that's coming into me to print things, I can wander around and follow it back. So they're able to do it. And it's a huge hole. And in a lot of cases, people aren't even looking to realize, okay, well, if I've got to assume, I'm going to lock the doors, I'm going to put a security system in, but am I sure they're not going to get in? No. I'm going to still assume they can get in. So I'm not going to leave a big pile of cash on the kitchen counter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that you have to realize. You got to put things away. You got to secure things inside, because what if they do get in? And maybe they only get a little ways in.
In technology, people think of it as being complicated, and it can be complicated to implement. But when you think about what needs to be implemented or protected, it's exactly the same as your physical environment. Mm-hmm. Think of technology just like you think of your physical environment. If you had to secure your home, how would you do it? And then just do the same thing. We talked about layered protection. We talked about, intrusion prevention. Well, I mean, that's IT or your home. It's the same thing. You're trying to prevent somebody from intruding into your home. It's just like, and your network as well. And what do you do around that? Passwords, like you said, and you want to make sure that those hackers are not attacking you because you're one of the low-hanging fruit types of businesses.
Well, and the hackers will say, look, they're going to start with low-hanging fruit, and if it's on the ground, then they're really going to do it. And so when you look at, okay, how do you learn how to do something new? Well, you start with what's easy and see how it goes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they start practicing on, they hone their skills on the practices that are not secure in their networks.
Yeah, so if your business, no matter what it is not secured, then no matter how many times you tell me, and we both hear it a lot, I don't have anything on here that anyone wants. Yes, you do. You have a network and an internet connection. That's really, that right there, people can do amazing things just with that. So, yes, they do want it, and you are now, the minor leagues for hackers to learn how to do things. So they say, first, can I get in? Now, once I'm in, let me see where I can go. And they learn how to do everything, and they get all the data, and they walk away. And then eventually they learn how to come back in because they still have a doorway. And that's when you learn they're there, because they're publishing stuff or they're encrypting everything or whatever. But you're their training site. Mm-hmm. And they sell these things to each other. I mean, they're like, okay, you want to learn how to do this? Here, we'll sell you this program that already does X, Y, and Z. So you don't even have to learn it. We'll give you this vulnerability information. Now you go off and practice.
And they may even post your public IP address online.
Yeah. Here's an easy one. Okay. Everybody race to see who can get to printer 4567 faster.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a new issue though with hacktivists where they target you because who works for you, who you treat, something somebody said, the type of business. These people, they see it as their method of vetting out justice and attacking a business to show them that you are vulnerable too. And whether it's, the famous anonymous attacks or even smaller little entities that go after these businesses, they could just decide, well, you treat people that have sex offenders, okay? Your mental health clinic that works with sex offenders, well, I've decided I'm going to rid the world of them, and you need to heed my warnings. I'm going to go in and get all of the information from your site. So now you're a target. So it's not something to take lightly and to assume you have nothing, because everybody has something they can use.
Mm-hmm.
And the big part of going back to this was a great line that I heard a speaker say when we were talking and they were discussing these kind of things. And we talked about the firmware on the routers and those kind of things. When you're looking at applications, whether it's cloud applications that run on your machine, firmware on your devices, what you don't know is how many different what we call open source utilities they use. So it's software that's freely available to anybody. So you plug it into your system and it does a function within your system that then takes care of everything. Well, that's like the Heartbleed serious SSL issue. Heartbleed was open source. And so the great line was, you can go to the grocery store and you can pick up the salad dressing and see what all the ingredients are, but flip over your router and you are not going to see a list of ingredients. I love it. And there's a lot of stuff in there you don't know about. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know.
All right. But your IT company should be able to provide you with reports showing a lot of that information, if not all of it.
Right. You should be getting reports from them that show the monitors they have on your system, and really for your own documentation to show that you're actively doing these patches, security patches, vulnerability scans, antivirus evaluations. Are they all up to date? Are they all running? Is one of them getting hit repeatedly with the same virus, which means something's going on somewhere? There's a million things that should be readily available on a HIPAA compliant IT company's reporting capabilities. Mm-hmm. In fact, the ones we work with, we tell them you should develop a package of reports, and whether it's monthly or quarterly, whatever your clients want, you provide those to them and show them what you've evaluated on that data. Don't just dump a report out and send it to them. Look at them and read them. Hello. And understand that you could be making these mistakes on the inside to open these things up. It doesn't take a technical person to open those holes too. Don't think that, well, no one's been in touching my firewall and my router, so it's fine. You could be opening it up from the backside because you've learned how to do this really cool scripting thing. And it's really awesome to connect this service to that service. But what you've actually done is create a giant hole that they can follow through. So you have to understand these things. Security is not something easy.
Yeah. And that's like, I've seen clients even try to circumvent security to make things easier,
Yeah.
They want to circumvent the passwords, or they want to circumvent the encryption, or they want to circumvent the remote desktop protocol that you have them on, because they don't want to have to click 4 times to get to something. They only want to click once. And I understand. Yeah. I understand that. I mean, who wants for it to take 2 seconds when you should be able to do it in 1?
I know. Yeah.
But you just need to leave those things in place, and if you don't know absolutely what you're doing, then leave it alone. And don't download these games off social media and click on these things in your emails that you don't know about. If you want to do all that stuff, then do it from home. Don't do it in your business environment.
Well, but don't take your computer from work and go home and then do it. and
bring it back.
And don't work from home and then let the kids play on the computer. You know, you've got, that's a pet peeve of mine is, I've got all of this important information on here, and then I'm going to log in and then hand it to the kid to do their homework. No.
Yeah.
I mean, they lure kids into stuff for their homework even. I mean, it's, the kid doesn't need to be looking for it. They'll find a way to get them to innocently. It's like, hey, you want some candy?
It'll be like my kids. They're like, we're going to download this mod we got off of this sharing site. I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Have you done that yet? Because if you did, then you pretty much probably infected the machine.
Yeah. So, you got to get them on their own subnet, right?
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
They're completely separated from everything else in the house. The TV is separated from everything. I have everything separated. My ISP comes out here, my internet service provider, they come out here if we have an outage. And the last guy they sent out, he's like, why do you have 10 wireless networks in your house? I was like, yeah, you're not going to be able to work on this. Just get my modem going and be about your day.
Yeah. Move along now.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't have the kids at the house like all the time, so I only have 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's nerdy stuff, man. That's what happens when we can do these things. But our paranoia is not for naught. I mean, we know what's out there, and it's kind of like we know we live in a bad neighborhood. I mean, the internet is a bad neighborhood. You should treat it that way.
I just looked at my UTM report because I have a UTM in my home. I looked at my UTM report the other day from last month, and I had over 2,300 intrusion attempts on my home network.
Yeah, and that's not even a business IP.
Nope.
They don't know what they're going to find there. They're not looking for that for any other reason than they see traffic they think they can jump a hold of on there. And they see probably the kids coming out of there, and they're going after it, trying to get in to see what they can find that they can take over, because there's consistent traffic coming out of there. That means there's equipment constantly connected. So be very careful out there. You don't want to be the low-hanging fruit. Get yourself professional help. You need it. You need a professional.
That's not the first time I've heard somebody tell me that.
Yeah, you're the fruit on the ground, but in a different kind of fruity way, right?
I'm just fruity.
Yeah.
Fruity. Oh.
But, what kind of fruit are we? Let's give ourselves a fruity name.
You're a dingleberry.
Dan, how'd you know that's what I was going to say you were?
I had to beat you to it.
What is that? The ugly fruit. Ugly fruit. It scares you to look at it. That's what I thought you were going to come up with. So there's plenty of ways that you can at least make sure that you're requiring them to reach. Because the thing is, if you can just get above the lowest hanging fruit, there's so much other, they'll move on. Unless you're a specific target, and then you better really be above that low-hanging fruit so that it's not like they can just walk in the door and laugh because it looks like no one was looking. Heck, Ashley Madison.
Yeah, so tell us about the doctor.
Yeah, we like to use this one just because it involves the doctor having an affair. And, we talk about it in other episodes, but this one is perfect for the Ashley Madison discussion because it's a doctor having an affair who used his credentials to look and see if his mistress had an STD. Now, imagine what all those Ashley Madison people may be trying to do to cover their tracks. And clearly, the hackers learned a lot about them. And let's just say you work for a company that maybe has certain standards and you're supposed to be above all of that. And then they find the CEO's email address in the Ashley Madison stuff. Do you think the hackers might decide to come after you?
They probably, well, I don't know what the information they have, but do you know whether or not they track their IP addresses? Because I know that's usually fairly easy to get.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the detail of the technical metadata that's on there. they're having so much fun with everything else. But, if the hackers got it, they may not have published that data. They may have published that to the dark web. Just they're holding that on to themselves necessarily. But I mean, they're able to see, going back to, I don't have anything. They were finding emails between the senior staff wanting to know, talking about, one of the things I saw that they ditched a program where they were hacking their competition. They actually hacked their competition. Well, you would think if they were doing that, they had enough sense to look at their back, They weren't checking their own area, but they're going in and attacking competition. And first of all, let's just review the fact that this was a site to go and have an affair, and they had competition. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and they were hacking their own competition, yet leaving their door open. That is, a pinnacle of hypocrisy right there. And to make it even worse, I think at one time they were talking about building an app that said rate your wife or something like that. So really hideous stuff going on. And I think that couldn't even catch on, that even the people that had no morals thought that maybe was going too far, because that got set aside. But they talked about it, and so you're able to see just how far these people were willing to go for the almighty dollar, because they knew they could get clearly a whole bunch of men to pay. And they were tricking them. They were creating these dummy accounts. They were, all kinds of stuff. And then they essentially had everything they needed to blackmail them. And they were just doing it. These guys just fall for it. So the fact that they got in and got all of that detail and all that information, they can go in just to see what they can learn, and it may be something embarrassing. You never know what's in email. You don't know
what you don't know.
There you go. So there's our discussion for the day, I think.
Now get your fruit off the ground.
Get your fruit off. Get your fruit up. Get your pecans up with the little sucker up roly thing, so that somebody like David has to climb into the tree to get, that was too easy.
Shake your limb. You got to shake your limb.
Okay, there we go. There's just, we could go downhill quickly, so we should stop here, David.
Yeah. Well, if you liked today's episode, or if you didn't, go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review and tell us how wonderful we are. And we also ask that you visit us on our website at www.helpmewithhipaa.com. You can also leave us a question there, and we may feature your question on a future podcast. You can also share this episode on your favorite social media outlet, and visit us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Anything else, Donna, before we close?
No, David. I got nothing else to share today.
Very good. You're speechless. That doesn't happen often.
Yeah, well, I almost rattled off in the wrong direction like 3 times, so it's best that I just...
Let's cut it there. All right. All right. I hope everyone has a great day. And remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.